Do you know where the adapter is?
Yeah, that's it for your.
I think it's downstairs. I'm gonna go downstairs.
I think it might be downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you think he's HDMI?
Yeah, it's HDMI though. For the Apple.
I don't think it's here.
I think it's downstairs.
It might be downstairs.
At least I get yeah, at least it happened. I'm sure.
No, you're good.
Take it. You want to take it out of the power? Yeah. As well. Yeah. What's the significance of that? There's how many cars slow it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And then we ended up living like 10
Oh, Sheikh Suhaib.
I didn't have part.
Oh,
Sorry in the back. So sorry.
it's okay.
Is there an issue with digital camera?
No, I couldn't find that cord.
Oh,
When I
okay.
did that one, but we had it alhamdulillah the whole time.
Yes.
Not like that.
You don't need the big camera. You just need an iPad.
Such a hard time. He was projecting his own. Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله أرسله الله سبحانه وتعالى رحمة وجعله حجة أفضل الصلاة والسلام عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Sorry about the delay in starting. One of our folks, our family here at the IIC, her grandmother is very sick, Sister Hana, who does everything, so please make dua. She had to go to Malaysia today. So pray for her, inshallah, and her grandmother. We'll give her shifa, inshallah. You guys can go forward if you want to. It's like, feel comfortable. So we're going to a text, inshallah, Aqidat al-Awam, written by Imam al-Marzuqi al-Husayni al-Maliki, that goes through the foundations of creed. And a lot of times what we notice is that we may be passionate about our Islam, but we don't couple that passion with like learning. So it's important and fundamental to have access to texts that at least give us the basic scaffolding of our faith, alhamdulillah. So we started the book 2 weeks ago. We'll go through what we covered, and then we'll add a few more things. And then there'll be no halaqah in the park this Thursday. This Thursday we have Sheikh Hasib Noor from Al-Maghrib, who I've known Sheikh Hasib Noor for like a long time. MashaAllah, very, very talented and brilliant person and scholar. And then the week after we'll start Thursdays only halaqas in the park, inshallah. So we said that he wrote this book. It was a poem because one of the cool things about him is that he was very interested in being like a public intellectual. And there was this movement that you find like 200-300 years ago, in particular in Cairo, of a concern of making sure that like everyday people had access to like religious foundations. So we'll read it, inshallah, and then we'll start where we stopped. He says, "Abda'u bismillahi wa rahmani wa birrahimi da'im al-ihsani," which means I start with Allah. We said that ba, and if you need a copy of this, again, you can email me at wdw2@nyu.edu. WD, W2 at NYU and just put like, I need the text. And you'll get it, inshallah, for a small fee. So, abda'u dua at night. Abda'u bismillahi wal rahmani. And that ba, I don't know if you can see the pointer, means barakah. The ba of tabarruk. So, I seek the barakah of Allah's names. With Allah, the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a difference about its origin. Many scholars said it actually has no origin. Ism jamid, ghayr mushtaq. It's not like rooted into any other word. But there are other scholars that said that the word Allah means something indescribable. Something that defeats the mind, like the mind cannot capture it. وَالرَّحْمَنِ وَبِالرَّحِيمِ دَائِمَ الْإِحْسَانِ. And again, I mentioned it before, دَائِمَ الْإِحْسَان is alluding to something really important. Da'im means always, ihsan, excellent. That no matter the situation, the Sheikh is showing that one of the foundations of faith is to have a good assumption of God. Because if I allow difficult times to shatter me, then I worship difficult times. And if I allow success to blind me, then I worship success. But for the believer who sees Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir, and it's hard, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I did this. The focus is Allah. Because the reward, if I'm thankful, is an opportunity, and challenges and trauma and difficulty, if I'm patient, is also an opportunity. Because I don't live for this life. I live for something else. وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا. Surah Al-Kahf, like the good that you do is like really what matters. So we can see something that Islamic theology forces us to adhere to a certain framing of the world. And that is that this is a temporal existence. It's important. We should be invested in it, but we should not be consumed by it. And consumption for us could be either being delusioned with a false sense of autonomy through success, or destroyed and rendered weak by presumed failures. But for us, a foundational core value is وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. You might hate something, but it's good for you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. Allah knows, and you might hate, you might love something that's bad for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows you don't know. Like Islamic theology is a very intense, distilled relationship with the Creator. And it compels us to center ourselves, especially in a world where the material is constantly being amplified to be what should matter. To the point now that people like neglect their families and stuff. Like what's intrinsically valuable to them will be ignored. I was at a restaurant with my wife one day, and like we saw this family, they were all on their phones, man. You know, they're all sitting together, but they're all on their phones. Like they weren't talking. So I said, man, connected but disconnected. Like we're connected, but we're not really connected. And the outcome of this is like the idea of loneliness, mental health issues that people are facing, because the ability to have real intrinsic relationships is not there. The ukhuwa of capitalism is not a warm ukhuwa. It's a competitive, cold ukhuwa, or communism. Whereas religious relationships are things which should be seen as intrinsic and transcendent. So when he says da'im al-ihsan, you know, we're going to talk about this when we go through the hikam. When Imam Ibn Ta'ala says, min alamat i'timad ala al-amal nuqsan raja inda wujud al-zala. From the sign that you trusted in your deeds or in the world is that when the biryani hits the fan, you slip. You lose your hope in God. From a sign that I trusted in something material, finite, instead of the infinite, is that when the finite breaks down, I lose my trust in the infinite. This is for us a subtle form of idolatry. Doesn't mean anyone's mushrik, like, no, I'm not Muslim anymore. No, but it's a subtle form of impacting our tawheed. So da'im al-ihsan, if we go to the Quran, how should we have adab with trauma? We see, subhanAllah, the hypocrites, يَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ ظُنَّ السَّوْءِ. They have a bad suspicion of God. Like, why do we lose? Why do we lose Uhud? We shouldn't go. Next time we go, we're going to die again. But the faithful community of the Prophet, هَذَا مَا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. This is what God told us is going to happen. This is what the Prophet told us. وَصَدَقَ. God and His Prophet spoke the truth. So when he says da'im al-ihsan, he's touching on kind of like the emotional outcome of having a good understanding and faith and commitment to Islamic monotheism is a world vision. How I see the world. فَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الْقَدِيمِ الْأَوَّلِ. Then praise be to Allah who has no beginning. Al-akhir, al-baqi bila tahawuli, who has no ending. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And doesn't change, doesn't have like good and bad days. ثم الصلاة والسلام سرمدا على النبي خير من قد وحدا. And then peace and blessings be upon the Prophet ﷺ, sarmada, always. You know, like whenever you feel down, just send salawat. Like if ever we feel low or we feel alone. A lot of us, like I'm not from New York City. I went back to where I used to live for 10 years. It's like really different, even though I haven't been there a long time, because you feel like the raw furnishings of where you're from are always more comfortable, you know, because you know people. So sometimes we may feel isolated or lonely. We may get down, we may be struggling. Make salawat. Why? Because immediately you have a friend. You have the best friend. The Prophet ﷺ said, no one says salawat upon me except I send salawat upon her or him and I say your name. Like, can you imagine? Like right now, let's all say it. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just say your name, man. Oh, Allah, send salawat upon this person.
Question, I know on Jum'ah, he says your name, alayhi salam, but like, does he include your father, like your Ibn so-and-so, or no?
Yeah, different narrations said the son of such and such, the daughter of such and such.
So, all time.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And also the hadith that how can we punish somebody under the earth when they have a righteous offspring above it? Alhamdulillah. So when you send salawat, mashallah, there's so many great blessings that come with it. And it's so easy to do. And if someone doesn't know Arabic, say it in any language. ثم الصلاة والسلام سرمدا على النبي خير من قد وحده. Peace and blessings upon the best person to recognize Allah's oneness. وآله, his ummah, وصحبه. Here, I don't know if I explained this before in Arabic, there's this idea of a conjunction of a particular to a universal. Like now you say, Astaghfirullah, the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie. Kyrie is part of the Brooklyn Nets, right? But you mentioned the Brooklyn Nets in isolation. You mentioned it as a universal. Then you mentioned Kyrie as a particular to show how important he is. Like if I said, you know, chicken biryani. The biryani is important, but I'm focusing on the chicken, right? Do the same thing. Like I ate food, steak, and steak. Like I ate food, it's like a universal. It's weird in English, but I mentioned steak because ashraf al-ta'am, yani fi Oklahomiyin, steak. So here the same thing. Wa alihi, on the community, wa sahbi. The community is the universal, but who are the special part of that community? The Sahaba. So he isolates them. This is called atf, khas ala al-am. It's a lot in the Quran. Man kana adu lillahi wa malaika. Who's the enemy of God and the angels? Wa Jibril wa Mikael. He mentioned angels. Why you mentioned Gabriel and Michael? To show their importance. Okay? وَمَنْ تَبِعْ, and whoever follows سَبِيلَ دِينِ الْحَقِّ غَيْرَ مُبْتَدِعْ, and whoever follows the truth. And now he's going to introduce the first obligation in Islam. And sometimes I may explain things, it's a little difficult, sometimes it may be too easy. You know, it's invigorating to engage so many people, but also sometimes you gotta cater, you know, to towards everybody. Like not everybody wants a char. You know what I'm saying? Like not everybody wants it spicy. Some people want it spicy, some people don't. I can tell I converted in a Daisy community. MashaAllah. A char, man. وَبَعْد فَعْلًا بِوُجُوبِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. We talked about this. He said the first obligation, anyone interested in Islam or people around us that like are wanting to come back to Islam, the first obligation of Islam is to think, to know, to learn. Man, subhanAllah, I had a lady, she sent me a message. It was incredible. She's from Gujarat and she's Hindu. And she's like, I have secretly converted. But like, how do I navigate now, like learning? So we gave her a scholarship to our institute. But like, she's like, where do I go? I was like, you gotta start learning first. Oftentimes we want to practice before we learn. That leads to problems. So I said to her, the soil of your conversion is what you're gonna learn now. So like, just focus on learning, and then when you're in a different position, maybe more stronger, more independent, more financially stable, you can go full Muslim, right? But it's very beautiful and very powerful that the first obligation in our religion is to learn. Because passion is not necessarily an authorization. We'll talk about it in the Hikam on Thursdays. One of the things that he says, سَوَابِقُ الْهِمَمِ لَا تُخْرِقُ الْأَسْوَلَ أَقْدَارِ. Like your heightened passion's not going to change qadr. Like just because I'm super passionate about it doesn't make it right. And oftentimes we find people who think just because I'm religious, I have the religious vibe, that means I'm now sanctioned to act on impulse. That is a recipe for disaster. And that's why sometimes we find religious people, they hurt me because they confuse their religiosity with being sanctioned. I mean, I could be passionate about, Bitcoin, but you ain't gonna let me try to invest your money just because I'm passionate about it. I'm so passionate about it, let me do it for you. What do you know about it? Absolutely nothing, but I'm so passionate. But that happens sometimes with religion, and that scares people away from religion too. Whereas religion is a process, right? We talked about it. It's baked, not microwaved. So he says, فَعْلًا بِوُجُوبِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. Like, learn. Yes, sir.
How did it work with like the Sahaba? Like in that time?
Yeah, well, number one, they had the Prophet around them to bounce their ideas off of. But look at Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar becomes Muslim. He's like, I'm going straight to the Kaaba. I'm going to tell everyone I'm Muslim. What does the Prophet tell him to do? Don't do it. Don't act on that impulse. What does Abu Dhar do? He did it. What happened to him? He got hurt. In fact, he did it twice. So one of the relationships we see, he did it twice. He came back and said, I'm doing it again. Like, I'm even more passionate than the Prophet, because he's from Banu Ghafar. Banu Ghafar, yeah, that's rough. They're known to be robbers and very harsh people. But his passion gets him in trouble. I became Muslim at the Thanksgiving Day table in front of my parents because I thought, I'm super passionate. And my father was like, tell us about that Muhammad stuff. And my brother's fiance was there. So, he's trying to like impress. And I got mad, man, because there's a big ham in front of me. My mom was like, baby, have some ham. I was like, oh, I'm so good right now. Like, I didn't tell him I was Muslim because I'm like, that's a scary thing. We're going to start, inshallah, on Fridays bi-weekly program just for converts and their families. But like, conversion is like emotionally very, very challenging. When you're 19 or 20, at least me, I was like really energetic. So my mom was like, have some ham. I made it just for you. And man, it was intimidating. It was one of the big ones, full of hormones. And I was like, man, that ham got a six-pack of abs, dude. Like, I saw the ham flexing. But I was like, nah, I'm good, man. I'm so good right now. I'm just gonna have the broccoli. And then my dad picked up on it. He was like, oh, why don't you tell us about that Muhammad stuff? Then my brother's fiance is like, she's from Abilene Christian College. That's like hardcore. That's where she went to school. That's the Azhar for Christians. No, that's the Medina. That's the Riyadh. And then I said, I am Muslim. I was passionate. That was the worst thing I could ever done in my life. And my mom was like, what? I said, yeah, I'm Muslim. I believe in Allah. Ahmed Didat said this. Ahmed Didat said that. Zakir Naik said this. I start going in. I'm just punching, right? And then my mom's like, how could you turn your back on Jesus, right? And then it just implodes. I'm like, I'll eat the ham, I'll eat the ham. I didn't eat the ham, but I'm just saying, like, you know. But I acted on impulse, right? Whereas I probably could have been a little bit more smooth. So ma'rifah is learning when to be strong and brave, and learning when to be smart and nuanced. But here he means what you, Imam Shafi said, what you need to know about God to keep your faith healthy. So that means like communities should, hamdulillah, communities should make sure that you have the opportunity to engage. You can't condemn the sick if you threw them out of the hospital, man. You know, I always found it funny, the masjid doesn't allow women, and then the khutbah is against women. I mean, the masjid ain't open to them. Like, where do you think they're gonna go? Why are they going to Zayn Malik? Because Zayn Malik is open. No, for real. I heard a khutbah one time, girls going to see Zayn Malik, right? I was like, well, there's no place for them in the mosque. So if there's no place in the mosque, people gonna go somewhere. Why are all these youth lost? How many programs do you have that are like youth driven? These converts are so bad. But converts aren't welcome in the masjid or in the community. So when he says bi wujub al-ma'rifah, that means two things. Number one, what I have to fundamentally learn as a Muslim about my faith. And then number two, throughout my life, Imam Shafi mentions what I need to learn. My doubts, my concerns, what I hear from other people, maybe what those around me, I need to be able to answer their questions. And what I love about this word ma'rifah, it doesn't only make the learner, it also makes the learner responsible to be a teacher. بَلِّغُ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. The Prophet said, relate for me. One of the most difficult, most transformative experiences I ever had as an early convert was I was at the MSA booth with this brother. I almost said his name. He's my man. He lives in Canada. May Allah guide him. But subhanAllah, he's a Canadian. You know what I'm saying? So he likes Tim Hortons. So we were at the booth, and these people would come and say, so like, tell us about God. He's like, I don't know. We have to go to the Sheikh. I don't want to talk about God. And then I'm, again, the neophyte, like, oh, let's talk about God, okay. I'm like Busta Rhymes. I'm going in. God this, right? I'm dropping bars. And then he's like, brother, we shouldn't talk about God. We should just go to the Sheikh. And I was like, what? And then someone came like, can you tell us what Islam is? And he was like, yeah, you know, we should go to the Sheikh. So then I started asking him, I said, like, do you go to the Sheikh for everything? Right? And he told me, like, I don't feel like I'm empowered to speak about religion. I haven't been taught in a way that empowers me. That's a problem. We don't need unhealthy reliance on religious teachers. Religious teachers' jobs like tech support. You call once in a while, you get some ideas, and you don't have to accept it or not, but it kind of helps you tone things up. That's it. So it said, فَعْلَمْ بِوُجُوبِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. What he means ma'rifah here is shar'an, religiously. مِنْ وَاجِبِ لِلَّهِ 20 صِفَةً. 20 things you have to know about God. 20 qualities. What I call sifat al-20. Why would the scholars take all of the Quran and all of the Sunnah, encapsulate the ideas about God into 20 qualities? Because one of the goals of this theology is to prepare you for public life. You and I are not going to go somewhere and start talking to people about all the different ahadith about the names of God. You're not even going to be like, well, see, he has names, he has attributes, right? There's a difference between names and attributes, and this is the difference. That person is going to be like, man, your religion is really complicated. I just want to know about God. And most Muslims, when they go to conferences or at lectures, you ask them like, I just want to know. Okay, that's cool, but I don't know what mursal is. And we should understand that the masses of the Muslim community were always given what they needed and what was assumed they needed. There was this relationship. it wasn't over the top. It wasn't overly theoretical. So when they say Ishruna Sifa, are some of the Sunni scholars, one of the ways of Sunni theology, and there's 3 ways, one of the ways of teaching Sunni theology was to encapsulate God in the 20 concepts. Of course, God is beyond 20 concepts. Who needs those 20 concepts? Us. To help us in our own relationship with faith, and then also to become advocates for faith. So it's easier if you're an artist, a lawyer, someone in fashion, you're in athletics, to talk about God in a more universal set of principles than going into the details of the text. The purpose of these 20 qualities is 4 or 5 things. Number 1 is to strengthen our intimacy with God, to live a life of purpose, to live as though we see Allah, even though we can't see Him. Number 2 is to keep us up when the dunya tries to bring us down, or to keep us down when the dunya tries to bring us up. So centering us, it should center us. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna li nafsika alayka al-haq. You have a right on yourself. Your body has a right on you. Your family has a right on you. Your Lord has a right. Fa'ati kulla dhi haqqin haqqa. So give everything its right. Again, the idea of religiosity, people tend to think, oh, I gotta like suddenly flip everything on its head. I think it's more difficult to be religious and stay balanced than to swerve to one extreme or the other. So the Prophet ﷺ said, stay balanced. خَيْرُ أُمُورِ أَوْسَطُهَا. So the second is that we are able to now use our faith as a tool for centering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chastises Abu Jahl ar-ra'ahu istaghna for his sense of autonomy. Abu Jahl felt he's mustaghni. He doesn't need anything. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions theology as a way to raise people. نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَنْ نَشَاءُ. We raise who we want. So theology has this powerful role of inspiring me or disciplining me and keeping me centered. That's crucial. The third thing is that it should allow me and prepare me for public life. As I said earlier, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِنَاسٍ. The Quran says you are the best religious community sent لِفَائِدَةِ نَاسٍ لَا مُفَائِدَةٍ, to help, to be part of society, to be someone who works with others for good, someone who engages others. The Prophet said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ مَنْ فَعُ لِلنَّاسِ. The best person is the one who helps people. SubhanAllah. Now, how we taught theology is through the ethos of incubation. Whereas now we're seeing theology is taught with the ethos of what? Preparation. Go out and slay, man. Like someone told me Cardi B, I never thought we would say Cardi B in a halakha. But subhanAllah, she's getting closer to Islam. Have you seen her latest outfit? You know, subhanAllah. She wore niqab in France and is banned. It's incredible. How did that happen? The commodification of what's convenient for the French, man. That's another story. The white gaze. But, you know, someone showed me, like, oh, astaghfirullah. She says she prays 5 times a day. Astaghfirullah. How could she say she prays 5 times a day? I was like, you should engage her and be like, MashaAllah. I know the best way you can pray 5 times a day. Like, why does it always have to be negative? Like, take it and ride with it. Like, wow, since you already pray 5 times a day, why don't you come on over? You know, to that side. But when we've been prepared only to, because there are times where incubation is a strategy, don't get me wrong. But if that's the only strategy I have, then I won't be equipped to engage. And sometimes we find people who come out of Islamic schools in particular, when they get like free from, you know, that protective element, what happens? They start to break down, man. Because they weren't prepared, they were what? They were incubated. So Islamic theology, why would Allah talk about evil in the Quran? So we can know about it. We understand it. Hudhayfa said, I used to ask the Prophet about bad stuff so I could protect myself. I would know how to engage. So if we're only playing defense, we can't run a what? You can't run an offense. So there's both. And the coach is hikmah. So the next is to prepare us for public life. The last, we'll mention 4, is that we can preserve faith amongst our family. When Yaqub is dying, or when some of the prophets were dying, they would say, Yarithuni wa yarithu min ali Yaqub. Like, you'll inherit this deen from me. Ma ta'buduna min ba'di. On his deathbed, Yaqub, what does he say to his children? What are you going to worship after I'm gone? Right? We're only going to worship Allah. Alhamdulillah. So he's worried not only about generational wealth, but he's worried about generational spirituality. Look at Sayyidina Ibrahim, always making dua. Rabbi ja'alni muqima as-salah wa min dhurriyyati. Allah, make me one who prays and make my offspring. One black American brother, subhanAllah, he converted. And then he came to me, he said, I think so many black Americans became Muslim because our ancestors used to pray for us in the Senegambia region. We are the dua of our ancestors. I was like, whoa, man, you're going to make me cry, bro. But he was like, I am the dua. And I was like, stop. Right? I was like, get chills now. I was like, okay, man, you're the dua. But it's like really beautiful that he tapped into the idea of generational spirituality. How many of you have like righteous ancestors? They were praying for you. And we find strength in our ancestors. Right? So, generational spirituality. So when you're not married, pray for your kids. When you're not, I remember, I was like, I want a daughter. Everyone around was like, we want guys. Like, I had a big brother. I'm tired of dudes, man. They're hard to deal with. So I remember I was like, I want a daughter. If I have a daughter, I'm going to name her Shifa. Then alhamdulillah, I had a daughter. I said, alhamdulillah. But I was making dua before. You know, I was a freshman in college. So like now, because also your dua that you make now comes back and it's like your personal trainer. Don't you remember you asked for this? Do you remember you asked for this? So the Sheikh, purpose of theology is to create generational spirituality. The way we live now, as we're young, is how we're going to live when we get old. That's just how it works. So start to think now. Then he begins to explain these 20 attributes of God, and these are very powerful because they deal with a number of issues. Number one is how we understand God, but also they help us frame human agency, purpose, success, trauma, failure, and so on and so forth. So while they may seem very simple, they're actually very important, and they unpack themselves in deeper books of theology. So again, he's going to give you the scaffolding. And for a non-Muslim, it would be like, if you were to believe in a God, what would that God be like? Be like these 20. So this theology does something really important. It marries the text with logic, with the mind. It attempts to. So he says, فَاللَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ. First, Allah exists. فَاللَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ قَدِيمٌ بَاقِي. And if you notice, the word that he said the most up until this point is Allah. Because the ulama, they're called Ahlul Dhikr. Quran calls them the people of remembrance because they love to say the name of Allah. That's why the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith about intention, he said, you know, whoever migrated for Allah and His Messenger migrated for? He didn't say migrated for them, because the Prophet, he loved to say the name of Allah. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Whoever migrated for Allah, migrated for Allah. So the Sheikh says, فَاللَّهُ. Then Allah mawjood. Allah exists. The opposite would be non-existence. Al-adam. So whenever he mentions a positive, what's inferred is a negative. So for every quality he mentions, there's not one, there's two. How should that impact us? First of all, we can ask, like, okay, we talked about this before, but like, how do we know Allah exists? One of the arguments of scholars outside of the Quran, of course, is even then, in those times, they talked about the material world. They were like really enamored by the atoms. And their theory was everything around us is created. Thermodynamics, man. They didn't know thermodynamics, but that's what they were getting at. Everything in the material world has been created. The material world can't create itself. It's here, so obviously it was created, so it's got a creator. Our perspective is that creator is Al-Khaliq Al-Ma'bud Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That's it. They'll say, well, that's blind faith. Yeah, but how do you know he didn't create it? That's also blind faith. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ. This is the issue of believing in the unseen. So فَاللَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ قَدِيمٌ بَاقِي. Another book, Sheikh Ahmed Dardir in Al-Kharida, he says, وَالْفِعْلِ لَيْسَ إِلَّا لِوَاحِدِ الْقَهَارِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى. Like everything, al-khalq, everything that happens is by Allah as an evidence of His wujud. But for us, right, we're just trying to chill, man. I'm trying to survive in New York. One of my teachers used to say, مِن ثَمَرَةِ مَعْرِفَةِ الْوُجُوبِ تَرْكُ الذُّنُوبِ. If I know that I'm not alone, what kind of life am I going to live? If I know that I'm being observed, what kind of life am I going to live? Not only a life of fear, but a life of hope. Like a life of purpose. So believing in Allah's existence is a way that I bring a sense of like meaning and meta-narrative. We are believers of a meta-narrative. That meta-narrative inspires us. And also Allah has a plan for each and every one of us. Find the plan. And be passionate about it. We're going to talk about that in the hikam. One of the wisdoms that comes in the hikam is like, know your plan. How do you recognize it? Qadimun has no beginning. Baqi, no ending. The opposite of qidam and baqa is al-wilada wal-maut. Birth and death. Because a beginning is a physical measurement. So that would mean that if God had a beginning, then He would have a material beginning, so He would no longer be immaterial. He would be what? Material. And the matter can't create itself. It's like the argument. Because once something is physically measured, it can be contained. It has a start. Someone asked me in a class last week, what about Jannah? Jannah has no ending, but Jannah has a beginning. لَمَّا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى الْجَنَّةِ. The hadith when Allah created Jannah. He's like, oh man, I thought I got you. I was like, why are you trying to get me? I can be got. So a lot of things you could ask me. Not that one though. But anything that has a beginning or an ending. So Allah is beyond that. So now we see something, that our understanding of Tawheed is much more intense, much more distilled. And it creates a greater sense of responsibility. Like, yo, I worship the one that has no beginning or ending. وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. As the Quran, as I just read, everything will perish except God. كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul will die. And also that should create a sense of dependence. Like if I die and I was created, then I should rely on the one who brought me into existence to also keep me alive after death. Because I was dead before and He brought me to life. I will die again and I hope that He will bring me to life in Jannah. See that? There's like a nice logic there. كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم. How could you disbelieve in me? When you were dead and you were created, you will die, you'll be created. Look, we know that we were not here, we know that we're here, we know we're going to die, we only doubt 25% of the issue. I mean, if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, 75% is a good statistic to run with. So just as I was brought to life now, I rely on the one that will bring me to true life, Dar al-Hayawan, in the hereafter. The beauty also of this theology is it's constantly linked to tasawwuf, unapologetically Sufi. Not political quietism Sufism. I mean, most of the people that studied this text became leaders of revolutions, like Sheikh Hamad Bamba in Senegal. Salahuddin Ayyubi, this is the creed he studied. the Uthmaniyin, this is the creed they studied, they were not complacent. They were not like, yeah, okay, awesome, man. Trauma's here. Let's just enjoy the trauma while we got it. Cool. Trauma. Give me some CBD cookies, dude. I'm gonna freaking deal with this trauma. Yeah. Cece's got his foot in my face, but I got CBD cookies. I'm good. That wasn't these people. These people were inspired to heal a fractured world because they knew God is watching me. God is there. God has no beginning. God has no ending. So let me live for infinity, not for infancy. Let me be inspired. So qidam and baqa should allow me to understand that this time in this world is short. Let me just do what I need to do. Allow me to achieve what I need to achieve that's good for me, but I'm living for something greater than this. I met this person that got the new iPhone. That's quite a phone. And so like they were super like, they were telling me the whole week, man, I'm gonna get the new phone, get this phone, get this phone, get this phone. They were like hyped, which is cool, I get it. It's a dope phone. But then that person got the phone, she said to me, it's not really all that. I was like, I've been listening to you for a week. It's not a family member, by the way. I've been listening to you for a week. To the point that I was like, yo, maybe I should get this phone, even though I can't afford it. It's like super expensive. But it didn't quantifiably change her, like her expectation was. So I need the phone. Yeah, I need it for work. I need to use it or whatever. It feels good a little, but I know how to manage that, because no ending, no beginning is to Allah. Everything else will perish. So he says, فَاللَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ قَدِيمٌ وَبَاقٍ مُخَالِفٌ لِلْخَلْقِ. Mukhalif means to be in opposition. Here it's a reciprocal noun, means that two things are in opposition to one another. So God is in opposition to creation. Creation is in opposition to God. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. The opposite of this is partial or complete idolatry. So to say like, yo, that's the God MC, that's a problem. Or that's God, that's a problem. The first is called tashbih, the second is called tamthil. So we say, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So مُخَالِفٌ لِلْخَلْقِ بِالْإِطْلَاقِ means completely, in entirety. Nothing around us is like God. And God is not like creation. That's important because for us, when we look at other theologies that say like God had a son, okay, having a son is not something in opposition to creation. God walked on earth. The fact that you'd say God walked is idolatry for us. Because when you say walked, now it's no longer in opposition to creation. It's a measurement. It's subjected to gravity. How do you walk without gravity? So that means that it's muqahhar, that it's being dominated. That's impossible for us to believe. We don't say God needs a place. God needs a location. Because I need a place. What would happen if gravity stopped right now? What would happen if all physical laws broke down? What would happen to us all right now? We would die. So that's need. God doesn't need. So consequently, this theology says any verses of the Quran, and maybe this has puzzled some of you, any verses of the Quran or hadith of the Prophet that say God is up, we say up isn't literally up. Up is transcendence. Because when you say something's up, you give it a what? A physical measure. You give it a physical measure, it's no longer what? Out of the material world. So مخالف للخلق بالإطلاق ليس كمثله شيء. And then he says, oh, sorry. This is my daughter, mashallah. Look at that bow. So it's a big bow. That bow looks big on me. مخالف للخلق بالإطلاق وقائم. The word قائم means self-established. قائم means to stand. أنا قائم, I'm standing. But we say Allah قائم بنفس. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is self-established. But you and I, like now, I said he brought me water. So like I need Asad. I couldn't find the plug earlier, right? I can't just make the plug out of my, like, bing, plug, let's do it. I had to go downstairs, get the other plug. Then he was like, oh, the plug actually was in the bag the whole time. That's the definition of not being qa'im bi nafs. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qa'im bi nafs. He doesn't need anything, but He gives all. There's a word for this, as-samad. In fact, everything I'm talking to you about now, I'm not going to tell you, but go back and think about Surah Al-Ikhlas, and you'll find it there. Huwa yut'imu wa la yut'am. He provides, He doesn't need provisions. That's your Lord. So now when you got that job interview where you need sustenance or you need help, who do you turn to? Ultimately, foremost, to Allah, Ar-Raziq, Huwa khayrul raziqeen. And one of the hikam that we'll read together, he said, Arih nafsaka min at-tadbir. Give yourself a break from trying to be the qadir. Give yourself a break from trying to be the one that causes things to happen. فَمَا قَامَ بِهِ لَكَ غَيْرُ, because the one that took care of you and took care of things for you, you could never have done that for yourself. Like who created you, who gave you everything you have, you could have never done that on your own. فَهُوَ أَقَامَكَ. He's the one that provided for you. So qa'im bi nafs means independence and giving everything. The opposite of that would be weakness, intimidation, or need. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَوَاحِدٌ. Allah is one. The opposite of that is shirk, to associate partners with God. So these first six, Ghaniyun is not one of them. He just put it there to explain what qa'im means. These first six, the first is called Sifat al-Wujudiyya. Allah exists. The opposite is He doesn't exist. The next, after that, five are called Sifat al-Salbiyya, meaning that what they negate is impossible for the mind or the text to accept about God. So no beginning, no ending. The opposite would be death, birth and death. In opposition to creation, the opposite of that is like idolatry or likening God to something. Qa'im bi nafs, independence. The opposite of that is need or poverty. And the last, as we finish, is what? Is wahdaniyya, oneness. The object, the purpose of these first attributes is one thing: to preserve Allah's transcendence in our lives, to protect us from idolatry. Because we believe, and this is very important in Islamic theology, that God is known through tasdiqat, not through tasawwarat. That God is known through ideas, not images in the material world. Because if I start to know God by images in the material world, what's that going to lead me to? White God. Supremacy. Idolatry. So God is known through ideas because God is, we can't comprehend Him. It's impossible. So the job of these first six is to really create a distilled, refined sense of what it means to be a muwahid, to say La ilaha illallah. The next, and inshallah we're just going to read them and then we'll stop. The purpose of these, it's called Sifat al-Ma'ani, is something profound, because if we were just to stop at these first six, someone might be like, man, there's no way I can have a relationship with God, man, He's so perfect, I'm so bad. And that should be kind of like the initial response. But the next helps us accomplish the idea that Allah is involved and near us, that we're close to Allah, that a relationship with Allah is possible. So he says, and we'll just read them and then we'll stop inshaAllah. He says very nicely, وَحَيٌّ, Allah is the living, قَادِرٌ, the all-powerful, muridun, and we'll talk about this next time inshallah, the willing, because we look at life through the following lenses. I'm just going to let it confuse you this time. Unpack it for the week, but it's not going to confuse you. We believe, number one, that there's the will of Allah. Number two, there's the command of Allah. Number three, there's our choice. The will of Allah and the command of Allah, do you think they can contradict one another? Like, is that possible? The will of God and God's commandment, can they be in opposition? Allah commands people to believe, but Allah's will was that Abu Jahl would be what? Kafir. Now I can start to frame, why does the world suck? Because the will doesn't have to align with the command. But the test is, when the world sucks, I should choose what? To be down with the will or down with the command? So now the command means what God told me to do, what the Prophet told me to do, how I should act, how I should behave. Now we understand why Surah Al-Mulk says, who created life and death to test you. So now I'm able to frame trauma and success. It's not a promise. It could be a what? A test. But what do I stick to? The command. What's the job of the Quran and the Prophet? To teach me what? Out of those two? The commands. Now I see the importance of prophecy. Now I understand the importance of revelation. See that? It's powerful. Helps us look at the world a little differently. And also it allows me at times when I feel like, man, the whole world's against me, stick to the command. And from that, we take the whole pedagogy of Islam. Then what does fiqh teach me? Commands. What does tasawwuf teach me? How to manage this drama. What does aqidah teach me? The meta-narrative behind it. So that's why I said earlier, and we'll unpack this more next time, that theology should center us. Don't get me wrong, it's not like one time, oh, I'm centered. No, there's going to be times in our life where it's like, oh my God, this hurts. Oh, this is amazing. Why am I over here? But I know it's bad. That's life. It can't be stable. Because if the dunya was stable, it would be what? It would be Jannah. So, in many ways, at its height, Jannah is longing for stability. So when we say Allah is murid, the divine will is the only will. Because He's qa'im. He's qa'im, nobody can oppose Him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He's muridan, His will is there. So let me find what the will of God is for me, man. Let me align what I see around me with the command. If I can make that work, that's a good thing. So my job is through my choice to try to weld that, the command, into my life as though I'm living. I understand I'm living God's will by observing His commands. We'll talk about it, even if it goes in opposition to the will. See that? So that means that if I'm able to choose against the will, Allah's command, that's hidayah. That's guidance. But we'll open it up more next time. Still, mashallah. Alimun bi kulli shay, know the knower of all things. One of my teachers said, subhanAllah, the remedy for any spiritual question is to lose yourself in divine knowledge. He gave the example, like, why should I act if God knows what I'm going to do? Well, you just affirmed His divine knowledge. His divine knowledge told you to act. So if the divine knowledge told you to act, but you're invoking the divine knowledge not to act, this is a contradiction. But if I affirm transcendent knowledge, I'll act on transcendent knowledge. Or at least just say I don't want to. You know what I mean? I'm just not feeling it right now. So alimun bi kulli shay, sami'un basirun wa mutakallimu lahu sifat sab'atun tantadhiru. Then he mentions the other 7, hearing, seeing, and speaking. So next week, inshallah, we will finish those, and then we'll be able to go a little bit quicker. We'll finish ilahiyat, what we believe about God, and then we'll move into prophets. And then from prophets into the unseen, and then we'll talk about Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and then we'll finish the book, inshallah, and then we'll move on to the study of usul al-fiqh. Any questions, inshallah, before we make a move? Yes, sir.
Briefly touch here on this and something we're contemplating. So Allah is an-Nur, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is bashar. And then so my question is, I've been hearing that, I'm seeing around that the Prophet ﷺ is Nurullah. And as a Akida question, is that acceptable?
Yeah, if we said the Prophet is the light of God, this means, of course, metaphorically. Because God is not material. See that? Yeah. And sometimes people should avoid metaphor when it confuses people. No, I'm not saying you, simply how you hear this, right? We don't have a lot of liberal arts majors left on the face of the earth. Everybody went for the physical sciences and other kind of sciences. But to say the Prophet is Nurullah, as though like the Quran is the light of God, the Ummah is the light of God, meaning in a rhetorical sense, it's okay. But in a literal sense, no. Any other questions? Any dua requests? Everybody's doing okay? How's everybody? Inshallah, we pray that you're well.
We have many brothers in Egypt and across the Middle East that are in prison. We want some doctor and then
I mean, I have a lot of brothers and sisters now. In the last week, 2,000 people or more, some say 6,000 people, men and women, have been imprisoned by Trump's favorite dictator, Sisi. We ask Allah. I was in Egypt in 2011 when, subhanAllah, the revolution happened. So I have a lot of affinity for Egyptian people, mashallah. And our brothers and sisters in Kashmir, now 60 days of a lockdown. And of course, Turkmenistan. And also in Central Africa, Sudan, we make dua, inshallah. Allahumma khafif anhum, inshallah, wa yansurhum.
Sheikh, what's the name of this book?
Aqidat al-Awam, the Master's Creed.
You mentioned, were you able to teach Islamic theology that's being...
Yeah, so one would be that you teach Islamic theology to Muslims. The other would be that you teach it to non-Muslims who are seeking. And then the third is you teach it to non-Muslims who hate your guts. So it's kind of like 3 ways. And then with even the Muslim community, right, there's going to be different styles of teaching. Any other questions? So inshallah, I truly hope all of you are well. I mean that, inshallah. Ask Allah to bless all of you, inshallah, to remove any difficulties that you may be facing throughout the week, to remove any anxiety that you may be having, to help you if you're struggling with your family. I think every day I get a question about people struggling with family and, some autonomy that they've earned. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate, inshallah, and also make us here for you. Understand we are here for you. In this capacity, alhamdulillah, we want you to feel like this is a place you can turn to if you need anything, inshallah. And this Thursday we have great scholar, mashallah, and also Sheikh Aisha Prime also was like a fabulous scholar, and Sheikh Hasib Noor are going to be here. And I've actually done this with him. Sheikh Hasib lived in Medina for a really long time, so he actually takes people on like he did it with the IC group, I think, right? Takes people on like these walking tours of like things that nobody knows about in Medina. It's like amazing, man. So he'll be here on Thursday. We want to encourage everyone to come, inshallah. And then next Thursday, we're going to be in the park, not this week, but the week after, Washington Square Park. And then on Halloween night, we're going to talk about possession and exorcism. We are. It's like going to be interesting. Under the Brooklyn Bridge. So we'll see what happens. There's a halal cart there as well, so we'll have refreshments. But Jazakallah khair, it's wonderful to see all of you. Anyone here for the first time? Welcome. What's your names?
My name is my name is Asma.
Nice to have you both here. Alhamdulillah. Anyone else?
Brother from Malaysia.
Yes, sir.
Ari,
Abang, dari mana?
Malaysia.
Malaysia mana?
Nilai.
Nilan, I could practice my broken Malay with you, man.
Inshallah. Great.
Mashallah, welcome. What's your name?
Farid.
Free. Nice to have you here, man. Alhamdulillah. You had your hand up?
Yeah, Abdul from the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. I was just there. I took a red eye today. Well, whenever it was from the Bay. It's fun, mashallah. Anyone else from the? Yes, ma'am. Sabrina. Nice to have you. Welcome. Alhamdulillah. Anyone else? Jazakumullahu khairan. Yes, ma'am. Perry, nice to have you. Good looking out. Any other brothers? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Rabbana yassir lak al-amr. Brother Yasser's here, mashallah, so welcome. Jazakumullahu khairan, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, wa assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.